Hello and welcome to Policy Voices. I'm your host, Sabina Șancu, and this week on the podcast, we're going to discuss China. It's not necessarily a topic that we usually delve into, but on the 13th of November, we held our Europe-China Forum, which is a yearly occurrence and possibly the only forum of its kind where European and Chinese officials come together to discuss pressing issues about collaboration. And this year, it was also a special occasion of 50 years of EU-China diplomatic relations. So one of the topics that is really hot when it comes to China right now is artificial intelligence. But we wanted to delve into it a little bit more. And for that reason, I worked together with my colleague, Francisco Lopez, who is the program executive who was in charge of this summit. And together, we interviewed two speakers with a lot to say about China's new AI endeavors. Our first guest is Sacha Courtial. Sacha is an EU-China associate researcher at the Jacques Delors Institute. And we started the conversation with him, reacting to some of the things that were said in the summit, and then going into the European perspective towards China's AI developments, and him explaining it a little bit to us if we may not be so familiar with the developments there. In the second part of our podcast, we talked to Shanhui Zhang. She is an international commentator and news anchor at CGTN, which is the China Global Television Network. So she's an up-and-coming star on that network. On the side, she is also a research fellow at the Center for China and Globalisation. And Shanhui was able to give us the Chinese perspective on what is happening and give us some of the really latest developments there. So, as promised, we will start with Sacha's perspective. So, thank you, Sacha, so much for joining us. So, it's myself and my colleague Francisco, program executive at Friends of Europe, interviewing together. Today, our Europe-China Forum took place just downstairs. And now we have had the time to think about the ideas and things that were discussed there. And I wanted to ask you about your takeaways from the forum. What were some ideas that really intrigued you?
Hi, Sabina. Hi, Francisco. Thank you so much for having me here. This morning's summit was very fruitful. I think what we see is how intricate the different topics are between geopolitics, technology, geoeconomics. And of course, AI is not foreign to that. We see that there's a technological race now that is part of the geopolitical competition among big powers. It reminded me of the US-USSR moon race, AI is a bit like the new moonshot for global powers. China is a big, very important actor of it. Very recently, the NVIDIA CEO, Jensen Huang, he has announced that China will win the AI race, which is quite a big statement. And we've seen this morning how it is an important topic for them.
Right. So this just reminds me of the conversation we had in the forum where AI was compared to basically nuclear power, nuclear facilities, in the sense that it's a big challenge we're facing today, and we may decide to use it for good or for bad, or it all depends on regulation and agreements. So, going back to this topic a little bit of the cooperation on AI, and let's say the EU and China stances on how can we work together to regulate and to have a better use of AI. What do you see as the main challenges and also opportunities for both EU and China to cooperate in regulation, but also compete?
Yeah, that's the good frame. I think the main idea is that you have different model of AI development running at the same time today. You have a US-led, very capitalist-driven, with very few regulation development of AI on one side. You have a highly regulated development, which is the European model that we see, especially with the AI Act that we can talk about later. And China, in this sense, is a bit like the middle ground because they have regulated a lot. They have a more cautious approach to AI development than the US. They take in their development into account the risks that the very fast development of AI that could lead to superintelligence, etc., could lead to. But in the same time, they have a momentum on AI that we don't have in Europe. For instance, they are running AI in so many different areas, in school, in hospitals, in factories. I've seen this report saying that China expects AI to be involved with 90% of the economy by 2030, which is in 5 years. And we don't have this kind of mentality in Europe at all. So there will be big changes. And on EU-China, you're right to say that cooperation is needed on that side, because there is in a way, an embryonic global governance of AI that has started with those AI summits that we've seen flourishing. We had hosted one in Paris, there was one in London, there was one in Tokyo. And China and Europe are both quite responsible actors on this side. They are very engaged, they are very involved. They want to create not only collaboration operationally, but also how to make the global regulation possible. On that respect, there's many topics that we can discuss, such as the moratorium on autonomous weapons, those kind of things.
I just want to dip a little bit into the topic of basically how advanced are we in the EU on AI, but not only in the AI legislation, but also like the development of an economic model that is based on AI. We, of course, know that China is very big in the development of an economy based on AI, and also the development of startups and skill-ups on AI. In Europe, the situation is a little bit different. We, of course, just talked about overregulation, perhaps, the AI Act. Can you tell us a little bit about how does the AI sector in Europe compare to China's one? And what are the disadvantages or perhaps advantages that we have in the EU when it comes to AI in comparison to China?
I think in Europe, we're mostly focused on the technology itself and the equipment to go to the technology. So basically, what is AI? It's a lot of servers, a lot of infrastructure, and a lot of data to make it progress. And then you need high-level talent on AI, and all of this requires money. So you have 4 big ingredients to this recipe, and Europe is very strong in terms of infrastructure, is very strong in terms of a network of scientists. You have this pan-European network of scientists that it's called ELIS, for instance. Where we have less of a comparative advantage is on data, because we have very high-level data protection for European citizens, which is not the case in China, and in money, because we have much less public subsidies going onto those priorities than in China and the US as well. Then the last thing maybe is about the mentality that is very different in Europe, because we see AI as something that is a technology that should be developed to help maybe businesses, to help citizens. You know, we have an approach to AI that is very a tool on the side. A lot of European citizens are using ChatGPT or Gemini for, asking questions. But really in China, I emphasize the fact that they're using AI in all different areas of the spectrum of the life. And especially this idea of autonomous objects. You have in the US, like in China, autonomous cars already running in cities like Wuhan or San Francisco, which is not the case in Europe. You have the development of robots with, AI personality that is highly developed in China. Every day there are dozens of new robots coming on the market that are buyable in China. And we don't have this mentality yet in Europe of autonomous objects that we will see in our daily life.
I'll follow up then on the autonomous weapons that you mentioned earlier to continue with this thread of autonomous objects. You told us that another domain where the EU and China have a lot in common in their views and maybe their perspectives would be in the domain of autonomous weapons. Could you explain a little bit more about that? Because we're investing very heavily in the defense sector right now, but I don't think I've ever heard many people speak about autonomous weapons before.
The case for autonomous weapons is developing with the modern warfare. We see it more and more in the case of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with drones that are not controlled by humans anymore. And especially when we talk about autonomous weapons, they're specifically the lethal autonomous weapon system, which means that the weapons not only move by itself, but can kill a target by itself without a final confirmation from human being. Why is it strategically interesting from a military point of view is that it's much faster. If the AI by itself decide when it sees the target, if it decides right away to kill it, it's much faster than if a human being actually confirm the target. And in warfare, timing is so important that we see that those weapons are effective. And when we see a weapon as effective as it is, of course, in human history, we see that human wants to use those weapons. So there is a risk of a race for those lethal autonomous weapons that we already see on the battleground. And on that aspect, both Europe and China have the capacities to build those weapons, and this is the case on some aspects, but they both, contrary to the US, for instance, they both want global regulation on them. Why? Because obviously there is a risk, and it's part of the different risk that we assess with AI. If you give to an autonomous system the capacity to kill, then basically you don't know what can happen if you give it a capacity to kill at a wide scale. Or at least you cannot exclude that there is any risk. So both China and Europe want a moratorium at the United Nations level to refrain from using those weapons. I did some polls last year about the concern of the youth, the French youth and the European youth about AI. And actually, it's one of the first things that came out is that young people were very concerned about the risks for lethal autonomous weapons. Lethal autonomous weapons is not only, used on battleground, but also in cyber warfare. It is also lethal if you have a malware that is run in hospitals. We need those global actors. Basically, that's one of the areas of cooperation that we can have, because if the US pursue strategy of no regulation for the sake of developing at the fastest rate possible the AI capabilities, then you need at least Europe, China, India, major actors in AI to push the global community towards this kind of moratorium.
I don't want to go back to global responsibility when it comes to AI, but rather now that you've also brought in this very dangerous field of defense and perhaps like autonomous weapons there, I'd want to turn it more towards global responsibility and AI regulation. What are let's say the different ethoses behind the desire to regulate when it comes to EU, when it comes to China, and when it comes to the US? Because you've sprinkled that in between our conversation. I'd want to hear from you what you think is this perspective towards responsibility and regulation.
That's a very interesting one, because it translates from actually the political ideas that we have for our societies. China model of AI is meant to be for society good. So they want to regulate AI in a way that will help the collective community of people, of cities, making cities more smart, making transportation more efficient, making people more secure. And this means also having more control towards the collectivity. That's why China AI involves things such as society scoring, such as facial reconnaissance of masses, which are things that we don't want in Europe. If you look at the AI Act, and I want to pick up to what you were saying, Francisco, before, maybe of over-regulation. But actually, I think this is not over-regulation. I think the EU is showing a different path and is showing a model of development of AI that is in a way a model that we would like for the rest of the world. And the AI Act shows a good example of what is a possible regulation on AI, and it influences the Chinese. It influences some actors in the US. It's not because they are pursuing the exact same path that it doesn't have an impact. And for us Europeans, we have this idea that data are private, are a model of privacy, so that we don't want AI to be in a position to discriminate people, to make people profiling, to make society scoring, to make facial recognition. So those are things that we exclude from what we want AI to do. And that is literally a translation of our values, which is different from the Chinese one again, because for them, what is important is the harmony of the society, of the collectivity, and the security of the collectivity. They don't attach this importance to data privacy and of discrimination that we do.
You've been to China like for the last 10 days. You just come back from there and you've talked to many think tankers, like officials, a little bit of everything. We've seen the 5-year plan for 2025. It's of course over, and we're seeing the development for the next 5-year plan. And it's from what I've seen, it's really a big focus is on AI. This Made in China is becoming a little bit more towards what AI means for this. So, what is your feeling after talking to all these stakeholders on the future, at least the next 5-year future of AI in China versus the rest of the world?
So China is very involved on high advanced technologies for about a decade now. On AI, they have this Generation AI Development Plan 2017. They have the Made in China 2025, which was a 10-year plan. And now they are still moving forward high technology as a priority for the sake of national security. So it's not only AI, but it's also quantum computing or satellites or biotechnology or robots. Those are part of this 5-year plan, and we can expect it to continue, after, because there's really this shift towards technology as a way of competing, of being a global power. And the big difference, to answer your questions, is really this mentality shift. You see in China competition on technology everywhere that the civil society is taking part of. There was this year, the first marathon in Beijing of robots. This is something that increases as well the popularity of technology in the areas. And when I was saying that China wants to put AI everywhere, it is something that is accepted socially, because people see in the streets robots. They see in the streets autonomous cars. They see at their home that they can buy autonomous objects to clean, to cook. And this is really something that makes China very looking like a futuristic, because this is something that we don't see or use in Europe. So the mentality and the publicity, to not say propaganda, of the Chinese government towards how to use this technology, why it will improve the standard of living, why it is a positive thing, all of this helps the support of the Chinese citizens towards the state's objectives. And then it helps the companies to produce those technologies. So it's a whole collective effort that they're doing. And whereas in Europe, there is a bit of a shift between some very good, very competent companies, European companies. For example, Mistral is one of the forefront of European AI, and they have some support of, again, those network of knowledge, of talent, of some subsidies, but there is no this collective effort there. And I don't think every European citizens know about what Mistral is doing, or it wouldn't be even for us a way of nationalism or patriotism to actually use Mistral. I think a lot of European citizens are using other AI, which in China is not even imaginable. Of course, they will use a Chinese AI and not use an American one, because it helps those Chinese companies to take data from them. They know it will take data from them, but at least it will help support Chinese companies, So it's part of the patriotism as well to use those tools.
Just to wrap up, I'd want to zoom out because you've spoken a bit about how AI has not only changed but adapted to the relationship between the Chinese state and its businesses and its citizens. To go into how the rest of the world is interacting with China, how has China's AI push changed the rest of the world's relationship to China? We're coming off of a few difficult years with COVID giving China quite a bad rep. But now, after COVID, of course, the AI boom really happened, and China's at the core. And a lot of the technologies that we're using to support that and the raw materials that we're using to support that are dependent on China. So how has that rehashed our relationship?
I think the development of DeepSeek was a shock for the global community to see out of sudden that actually China was an actor of AI development, which was not that visible before. And China has suffered for many decades the idea of they were a poor country, only manufacturing low quality goods or low added value goods. And now AI is one of the sectors that they can really show that China is in the future. And it's a very positive development for them because reputation wise, it shows to the world that no, China is not anymore just a manufacturer of textile and shoes, but also of things that we Europeans don't even do. So they are very advanced technologically, and this is part of the pride of China, and this is part of the global competition in a way. So I think in the rest of the world, seeing this fast development of AI in China change our views toward this country. And while 5 years ago, before COVID, we were thinking of China as maybe an economy that was catching up, now when we talk about China, and it was the case this morning, we see that China has much more confidence. And we see that Europeans are looking China as a country that already surpassed us in many industries. So this is a change, and AI is part of it.
Thank you so much, Sacha, for the European perspective on China's AI developments. Now, to see the reverse, we are talking to Shanhui Zhang. With the AI boom that's coming out of China, especially fueled by companies like DeepSeek that are based in China, what is the main topic of conversation regarding AI in China and its innovations that are really like hot topics of discussion right now?
Yes. So now we are at the beginning of the November 2025. Why I mentioned this period, because it's interesting to see how Chinese AI scenario will be in 3 months or in 6 months, because it's changing very, very quickly. And you never know when there will be a new generations of technologies coming in robot, in AI. And so that's very exciting to see, and also to experience, being part of the Chinese people, to experiencing all these progress. So now what's going on now in China is this very recent competition. It's held in Beijing, especially in the Beijing Economic Technology Development Area. So this is called the China's first robot debate tournament, which means that they will firstly try to see how human beings are going to talk with machines, and they will we're also organizing people to crossly cooperate with machine. So it's kind of a man and machine showdown. This is very interesting to actually to see and to judge the logic and linguistic flair of each robot. So how machine cope with unfamiliar context, and how machine can produce contents with stylistic differences among competing algorithms, or how human strategies can be adjusted to the robot's thoughts, and also especially how people can interact with robots and how robots interact between each other. So that's, I think, is very interesting for now, because people, especially Chinese people, are getting used to this new ecosystem, how to work with AI, how to innovate with AI, and especially how to use and get the most benefits, the largest benefits of this low-cost large model ecosystem. For example, when we compare the DeepSeek and ChatGPT, you can find that DeepSeek trained a dance model that's actually very efficient and very lessly energy consuming. So this is very interesting to see that Chinese people, and especially these Chinese big models, are now very competitive in this international area. And also how AI plus can play a very new role in the future. Because especially for this 2025, and especially in the beginning of this year for China, we have this government work report. So in this government work report, you can see a little bit how China will design its new policies in the future. So in this report, China has put the AI plus issue on the list of the new quality productivity projects for the first time. So what is AI plus? It's actually to incorporate AI into all different scenarios in your life, like AI plus defense, AI plus taking care of the elder people, AI plus education, AI plus everything. You can even think about AI plus how to washing dishes, AI plus cuisine. So this can be very revolutionary mode, and how AI plus AI, this topic can impact your daily life. And so ministries and local governments are now racing to publish these catalogs for the 32 industries categories and how to incorporate all these logics into the AI model, how you work with AI, how you sleep with AI, how you drive with AI. So this can be very revolutionary change in Chinese economical situation and also in the employment part, that there could be more people in the future or even very short future working in the AI period. The third thing is that we have a data second supply reform, which means that now raw data never leaves the premises and the federated training is allowed. And so today we have 10 national level spaces that are actually slated for 2022 and are being built as the new infrastructure of AI 2+0 area. And the last thing, and also I think the most exciting thing, is to see the developments, the very rapid developments of the embodied intelligence and the robots. For example, now Beijing and Shenzhen, these very important and also very high-tech driven city, are both using and are both writing embodied intelligence into the 2025 manufacturing upgrade list. And so this is a very big part and with a huge potential of the technology development of China. Lately, I went to the Beijing's International Robot Exposition, and there you can see many. I can't tell. Like I think I saw already at least 40 enterprises exposing their embodied intelligence. And that's just a small part of it, according to, especially compared to the whole amounts of the Chinese companies now specializing in embodied intelligence. So the target for China is that there should be 1 million units by 2027. And so that could be something that's very, very interesting to see how this will impact people and how this will actually impact even people, how people live, how people think, and how people work. So I think these are the most exciting things. And I'm sure that if we talk about this topic in 3 months or in 6 months, there will be a huge change in the main topics, and especially how people are getting used to these new ways of working, new ways of sleeping, new ways of eating, new ways of ordering. So this is a completely change in the Chinese society. And what is great is that Chinese public, they're already used to very quick changes and even very fast changes. So they're more open to these changes taking place.
That's interesting. And you've told me a little bit about how the government is proactive on developing a lot of these initiatives. Then I'd be curious about regulating these, whether it comes to setting standards for AI use or maybe like reining in some initiatives that might be a little bit more crazy. So what are the government's objectives on regulating and implementing some of this regulation?
There has been some very strategic goal. For example, we're at the 2025. That's the end of the 14th 5-year plan. And so from the beginning of the next year, from the beginning of 2026, that's China is entering in the 15th 5-year plan window. The thing is that we can use this period of wrap up and the beginning of the 15th 5-year plan to make the AI accounts for 2% of the GDP's growth while staying inside the red lines. That's the security red line, that the AI is controllable, and also the ethical red lines. And so this is very interesting to look inside because you find that China is very eager to develop its AI, but on the same time, it's also paying a lot of attention to the secure part and also to the ethical part. And especially China is also trying to give some solutions and giving some standards because you know that today in the scenery you got China, you got the US, which are all of them are very developing very fast in the AI. At one point we need to have a regulation. We need to have a contract or we need to have an international agreement based on which regulation, based on which rule, based on which security definition that we can cooperate on AI issues. I think that's very important. So China is trying to give its own responses. China is trying to launch its own mechanism or its own declarations, or by asking all the international society to establish the rules and also the ethical agreements together. So that's what Chinese is doing. I think this is it's doing very quickly, and it's doing also. I think it's one of the first country in the world to have asked into the international society to look into this issue quickly and very seriously. And also, I think China is also having ethic constraints. That is, every model that goes public must pass a science and ethics review committee to check on biases, to check on this privacy leakage, and also its value alignment. So this is something very interesting to see, that China is paying very much attention to the regulationary part.
I think it's very interesting. Also, you were talking about international cooperation, like the role of regulation globally. And I wanted to focus a little bit more on that and thinking about like global cooperation on basically AI regulation. We've seen the AI Action Summit from Paris last year. We saw the EU and China having a big role on basically how do we regulate AI globally, given that it's a new actor that is affecting every single country. So based on this, where do you see the next opportunities for EU-China cooperation in global AI negotiations? And what is your view on the Chinese general, let's say, diplomacy when it comes to AI regulation globally?
I think that China has always been very open to incorporating different thinkings and also incorporating different values in its own development. So in this case, as far as I can see in Chinese diplomacy's attitudes, in Chinese actions, you can always see that this part of China is open and also engaging in different parts and always having this multilateralism regards to different issues. So I think that's a very good way of doing things because in adopting and also in welcoming other people's thinking and other people's devices, you can make a common product, a public product that everybody can accept it. Either it could be a African country wanting to adopt the AI tools in its media development. It could be a Europe country who's interested in cooperating with China in a certain AI domain. So from the time that we have a global chart or we have a regulatory document on which everybody agrees to, that could be a great starting point when starting cooperation, which means that instead of imposing something to other countries, what China is doing now, and especially in these different forums organizing from last year till today, we can see that recently in the Wuzhen in Zhejiang province, this technological forum was taking place, and we can also see all these part and all these events. China always invite foreign ministers, other countries' ministers in charge of this domain in AI and communication and technology to come and to give their advices, to try to bring all of them together to have an opinion and to have some baselines and some red lines on which everybody agrees to. So that's something that can actually facilitate the cooperations.
So I want to go back to the point where you were talking about AI plus. You were talking about the application of AI in different fields of our lives, basically like healthcare, like cooking, like security, defense, anything. But I wanted to focus on the point of security because it's quite a big thing now in the EU, in Europe overall, and I think globally, the link between AI and security. So in terms of industrial applications, Sasha has told us a little bit about how the autonomous weapons industry is particularly prone to these developments in AI. What is, based on where you're standing, based on your position, what is the feeling that you get on the application of AI in the defense industry?
I think in the defense industry, it is something that do needs some advancement and do need some reforms with the development of AI, because you can't just use the AI in your working or daily life without using it in other domain where the AI can be very useful, especially in the defense part, in the security part, I would say. For China, it has always been a Chinese baseline that China don't want to aggress anybody. And the way to have this AI plus defense is to better make its own defense stronger. And this is also part of the notion that was incorporated in the 2025 government working report that's calling for accelerating the new quality combat capability. And also, this lists the AI as the core driver of the cyber information system. Especially, I think you have also seen on the 3rd of September this parade, and you can see also many dispositives that was developed and also integrated with part of the AI, which is very important for China. For example, China attached a great importance in the AI predictive maintenance and also a smart fuel resupply algorithm. And also China is paying much attention to the secure use of these weapons, especially to how to combine the AI and human together.
Indeed. And that's why regulation, both in China, but most importantly globally, and that's coming back to the point on AI global regulation, is very important. For instance, on topics like autonomous weapons, because, maybe one specific country doesn't want to use it in a specific way, but these weapons are available elsewhere. So that's just going back to the point on the importance of global AI regulation.
Right. But on the same time, I mean, when you're incorporating AI, this could be something interesting to see that the defense part in Chinese economy could be getting stronger and stronger. I think that in a very short period, you can also see this merging part between Chinese institutions with Chinese enterprises, even private enterprises, and this cooperation. And I think that could be interesting to see that economically speaking, the AI can favor a part of the high-tech technology enterprises in defense in China.
It's really fantastic to hear this from you. We've been in this Europe discussion, so this is really mind-opening. Unless you have any sort of like concluding remarks or things like that you want to, like a thought that you want to leave the listeners with.
What I want to say is that China's AI narrative is changing rapidly. Before, like 10 years ago, we have always talking China as a ways of technology catching up to some developed countries, catching up to some very well-developed countries. And today we can see that China is playing a leading role in the technology developing in the world. And so China is now using this governance export or governance philosophy exporting how to better use this AI by cooperating with all developing countries and all developed countries to have this initiative to getting all countries coming to governance and coming to developing the basic rules together. And then the other thing is this deep scenario farming today, to give an example to the whole society of the importance of AI and also the development of AI. And today we are facing with two important and very sensitive parts. The first one is ethics, and the second one is the defense. So I think that China is always trying to prove with the controllable innovation that security and growth can coexist. And also there's a lot of potentials and cooperations and possibilities to cooperate with EU countries. And so I can see that there could be more dialogues coming in mutual recognition of standards from Chinese side, from Europe side, even from the US side. and then the data hosting, the military transparency, and also the rule-making power, where China and Europe can cooperate together for a better global AI governance race. So I think that could be something that's doable between China and EU cooperation framework in the future.
Thank you so much, Shanhui. Thank you for giving us very precious insights. And thank you, Sacha, as well, for explaining it for beginners, so to speak. Now, if you're intrigued by any of the ideas presented in this episode, feel free to leave a comment. We post about the podcast on Instagram and LinkedIn. If you didn't already come from there, let us know what you think. And as for me, you'll hear from me next week on Policy Voices.